morning, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of Friday Coffee here with Brian Martinovich, your host, and Nick Burton, my co-host there. Nick, say hello to everyone.
Hey, everybody, good morning.
And we have a special guest with us, Benny Trish. I can call you Benny, right? That's okay.
Absolutely.
Cool. And as always, we lead in with a little bit of music here on a Friday. We're still listening to the new Clips album, so if you're a hip-hop head, I highly recommend you go out and check that out. We're going to go ahead and transition over to our main stage. Here we go.
No more music.
Dropping in. Yeah, no more music. We haven't gotten any feedback in on it, so I'm just going to leave it in for now. And if people complain about it, I'll take it out. But Benny, you want to give people a little bit of background on you? I think that we're now episode 13, 14 in at this stage, so hopefully people know who Nick and I are.
Oh, well, my name is Benny Trich, and I'm a veteran in the end-user computing industry. I just looked back, I installed my first Citrix server in 1996, 95, 96, so it's almost 30 years now. At the time, I was at the Fraunhofer Institute. Maybe we're going to talk about that a little bit, and they asked me to establish a multi-user server for the researchers there. And I didn't know what I was doing. I only knew somebody who was in this industry, and so they helped me to set up my first server. And it was one of the most popular services that we provided within the Institute for the researchers. So this was my very first touch point, and I never expected to do it until today. So later, I worked for consulting companies, for Citrix Platinum partners, and for vendors. And about 10 years ago, I started my own company and started building benchmarking tools, going back to what I did originally. I'm a physicist by early education in this thing, and so I'm back to running experiments and analyzing what I see to find out what the best perceived user experience is under certain network and protocol and, well, VM type conditions. So that's what I do pretty much day in, day out now.
So you've put yourself in a position that every day you get to do what you love, basically.
That is correct. So after being in a treadmill for quite a while, like working in a consulting company and being responsible for large teams, I was responsible for teams with up to 40 members. And so that was the typical career path that they expected those PhD students to do later. So like growing within the large organizations into leading positions. That's basically what our education was all about when I was on a PhD program. But I never enjoyed it as much as the engineering work. So coming back to what you just said, yes, I was able to do that, to lead big teams, but my passion is more about get my hands dirty. I'm an engineer, and I want to be an engineer, and so I really enjoy what I'm doing now, like digging into the latest versions of the technology and finding out how good they are. So living the dream.
It's really interesting. It's an interesting topic just in general, and we'll get into some questions here in a second. We have 6 people live with us right now, so it's a pretty good number, and we have some questions actually in the hub. But it brings up an interesting point. It's like when you let external sources define measures of success. Would you say that you're more successful now than you've ever been before in your career?
That's hard to measure, because it's always a question how you want to measure it. Because there were times where I was measured if I reached the sales target. So I was head of at Absence. I was head of a pre-sales team with 20 members, and we had a 20 million sales target. So The only measure was, do you reach the sales target or not? Do you keep the people on your team happy? Do you make sure that they have the right education, the right skill set, the right motivation? It's all that stuff. So it's people management and it's skill management.
Totally.
So today, that's a completely different story.
So, I mean, like, if the measure was of success at that time was, do you have a lot of people underneath of you? Are you making a business a lot of cash? You could say that the answer to that is yes. But I
Oh
would
yes,
say,
I
like,
was more successful in the past. If you look at it at that,
but the measure of success, I think, in my opinion, at least the true measure of success, is like level of happiness, and that
correct.
comes from alignment in your mission, right? Like what you consider your mission to be. And we kind of talked about it at the very beginning, but like you do what you love to do every day now.
I mean, I'm in a lucky position that now that the kids are out of the house, so the house is paid off, so I don't need much money anymore. And my wife, she has a good job. She's a teacher, and hey, even if I do not generate any revenue, and when I started my own company, that was about the position. My kids were about to be old enough to leave the house or make their own money. And so I was kind of off the hook. So for the first time, I was able to think about, hey, now it's not only me who needs to make sure that the fire keeps burning. And that allowed me to think about, what do I really enjoy? What is my passion? And yes, going back to programming and creating that kind of tools that I want to use to find out how good the quality of a technology is. That's something that really inspires me. And yes, today I can live my dream and work on that every day, full time. In the past, I was a contractor just to make enough money, like 2 or 3 days per week contractor work. And today it's 100% only doing my stuff. That's a
Yeah.
that's a very different
At
situation.
some point in time, you said, I don't want to spend those 2 days doing what someone else wants me to do. I'd rather do what I want to do.
Even though I learned so much from these engagements, as you can imagine, because you work with some of the best people in the market, and like I said, you learn so many things from them. But at a certain stage, I thought, okay, now when I don't do it now, I will regret it. Doing my own thing.
So the particular stage in your life that you're in at the time really kind of helped swing that pendulum as far as you doing what specifically you love to do versus before it was more about providing for your family.
That was always part of it. I was always able to work in a field, in a market, or in an industry where I always wanted to be. At the beginning, when I was like a teenager, when I was at school, when people asked me, "What do you want to be when you're old enough?" and I said, "I want to be a scientist." And I didn't know what it was because I was sort of inspired by movies and things on TV. And I didn't really know what it was. But in the end, I became a scientist, and today I know what it takes to be a scientist, and I use many of the methodologies that I learned. I was in a real full-time scientist for 10 years in my life before I decided to go into the industry, make more money, and live a very different lifestyle. But to your point, from that moment on, there is a boss. There is somebody who gives you a sales target, somebody who gives you, I don't know, like I was in a pre-sales role many times, and so convince the customer to buy into our technology. Like I said, it was fun. I learned a lot from that. In particular, I learned how to close deals, which is very important today.
I was going to say it might help you a little bit in your current day job.
I can tell you a little secret. When I jumped ship, going out of science and joining a company in our industry, like a platinum partner, Citrix platinum partner at the time, I was sitting in my first meeting there, and they were talking about leads. And I had no idea what a lead was. Like, how do we fill the pipeline and all that? That was jargon to me.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if most of the people listening to us don't have an idea or clue about that.
And that's the thing. So I had to learn that too. And over time, yes, I knew what it takes to convince a customer without lying. So I always said I will never lie to customers. Later, when I had my engagements at companies, like I worked for monitoring companies, and when I was at Control Up, once I was doing a pre-sales pitch in front of a customer, and they they asked for a specific feature, and I knew that this feature does not exist in Control Up. But previously, I had a contractor gig with Lakeside, and I knew that Lakeside would be able to do it. So I recommended that they test Lakeside, and the sales rep next to me, he almost
rep didn't
freaked
want
out.
you there anymore.
And we went out of this meeting room, and he asked me, "What in the world did you do?" And I said, "You know what? This customer has so many other problems. He's going to come back, but he will remember that we did not lie." And I work in a very conservative market. The German-speaking market is very, very conservative. So the same people work for the same companies for 10, 15, 20 years. If you lie once to them, they will never invite you back. You're out of the game. Simple as that. It's not like in the US where every 2 years, 3 years, it's new people being responsible for the same thing. Over here in the conservative European market, this simply doesn't work. Well, so you don't lie to this customer, because otherwise you're going to lose the customer. If you win this customer because you didn't lie, you will keep this customer for the next 5 or 10 years. Right. No churn. In the US, you have a lot more churn. In Europe, if you don't lie, no churn.
Yeah, so but you know what?
It's a fundamental difference.
It is interesting, just like your decisions really make have a rippling effect at the end of the day. Like, you might even think that it's insignificant, or that it'll be brushed under the rug or whatnot. But I've seen potentially challenging situations arrive with customers where they walk away from it not satisfied, and then all of a sudden you now get 40 or 50 NPS surveys for the entirety of the service division of a multi-billion-dollar company. And you're just like, whoa, what the heck just happened? Like, we never get this many responses. There was literally a concerted effort behind the scenes. And granted, like, after we peeled back the layers, it was a simple misunderstanding, and we were able to build a champion in them, actually, and they became a reseller of our technology. But your point is a salient one. It's that you have to be really hyper concerned with, like, what you say to people at the end of the day.
Not only that, it's the difference in the business culture between the different places on this planet. So things that may work in the US may not work in the German-speaking market, may not work in the Nordics and Europe, and may not work in the Eastern European countries. So you have to adapt to these different business cultures. Mm-hmm. And because I had worked for US companies, so I knew what it's like to sell software or to offer services in the US. The same is true for the UK. I've been part of Absence, and I was part of the IPO team there. It never happened, the IPO, but I was part of the preparation team in the UK. So I flew over to the UK every other week and stayed there for a week. So 1 week in the UK, 1 week at home. So I had it on a weekly basis, the difference between the German market and the UK market. The same was true when I worked for Login Consultants and Immediate. I had an apartment close to Amsterdam. So selling software in the Netherlands is fundamentally different to selling software in Germany, even though for me, it's just like 3 hours to get to the border, 3 or 4 hours, and I'm in the Netherlands. And the business culture is completely different. So it's about adapting to these different
totally,
which I really enjoy.
And even in your statement, when you talk about selling into the United States specifically, United States has different unannounced rules depending upon where you're selling in. You can't sell the same thing in New York City than you can in New Orleans or in Florida or Texas. Like, it's just going to fall on deaf ears.
That's fascinating for me to watch because, like I said, I know the European nuances. I don't know the US nuances. Typically I was more on the West Coast, in the West Coast market in the US. But I learned a lot about the East Coast market and a lot about the Texas market. It's
Totally
very
different. I mean, like you can meet people if you know the nuance in the United States, and without them telling you where they're from, you can kind of get a sense. You know, you're taking into account the accents, the mannerisms, you know, how they present themselves. But anyway, believe it or not, we're already halfway through. And we haven't gotten to any of our scripted questions. Ordinarily, Nick gives us the rundown, but we're actually going to change our process up just a little bit. And we got a message from Mithun Kumar, who's actually the creator of a technology called Commentify. Some people may like this and some people may not. What it does is it cleverly comments automatically for you on people's LinkedIn posts. So maybe a little bit controversial there, but hey, shout out to Mithun Kumar. I got to love the entrepreneurial spirit anyway, right? His question is, on measuring digital experience, it's tricky to balance what users feel versus what metrics show. Ever had a moment where the data didn't match reality? And I'm going to jump in really quick, and then we're going to turn over to Benny here. We were doing a consultation with a customer, with a prospective customer, not a current customer. And we were asking them about their user experience, and they said, oh yeah, you know, no one ever complains about the user experience here, right? So that was their benchmark. No one ever complained. And I said, well, have you asked them? And they said, well, you know what? Funny enough, when we ask them, they tell us that it's not good.
Not only that, sometimes if you ask them, and I did that at certain occasions when I do the benchmarking on customer side, and I went to those users and I asked them, hey, this performance, this sucks, and why don't you complain? And the response was, I gave up complaining about a year ago. It never changed. It doesn't help. So and if you find out that kind of little details, you go back to the IT admins. And coming back to this question, it's absolutely true that the metrics that you're collecting, like the monitoring data, does not always reflect what the user experience is. And I create a list of the quality criteria from a user's perspective. And it's like the boot and log on time. That's something you can measure. Application and content load time. Again, something that most of the monitoring tools can measure. But user input delay, lags, if the graphics APIs are supported, media formats are supported, if media is distorted, if there are artifacts created through the protocol or latency or network conditions or whatever, you cannot measure that. Even worse, sometimes if things do not work properly, the metrics, the monitoring system is all green, while the user cannot work. Because if the media does not show, there is no load on the system. If the video doesn't play, no load on the system. So on monitoring systems, completely green. The user cannot see the media, so they are completely not happy about it. So yes, it's not the same thing watching the telemetry data and talking about perceived user experience. Screen refresh rates.
This is a topic that's near and dear to my heart, having spent a decade in it now in cybersecurity. But I haven't forgotten the time that I've spent there. It's an interesting topic to me. And shout out to Mark Plettenberg, who came up with this great visual of a motorcycle race where the bike was upright and still on the course, kind of driving around, but the rider had fallen off.
Yes.
You know, it's just like, hey, look, bike is okay.
All good.
He's in motion. Like, but the other aspect of it is, it's like, no matter what metrics you're collecting at the end of the day, like, we have different perceptions of it as well, right? Like, what might be tolerable, acceptable to a human being that's still like using their Dell desktop computer from 2019 versus like someone that's on like the latest Intel Core technology. Like, they may be more tolerant of your poor user
and finding out what the user requirements are, and then trying to run benchmarks. And I record the screen video, so I really see what the end user is seeing, while using WAN emulators to modify the network settings. So I can say, hey, we were able to see that this branch office is connected to our mothership, and we have 150 milliseconds latency, and typically we have like 0.5% packet loss, and the maximum bandwidth is, I don't know, 10 megabit per user. So I can configure my WAN emulator to exactly that setting. And you cannot imagine how eye-opening it is for the admins if I put this WAN emulator between their infrastructure in their LAN environment and connect a PC that I use as the client endpoint through the WAN emulator. And for the first time, they experience themselves how hard it is to interact with the system that they're managing. And I did that at a customer with CAD/CAM users, and I let them navigate through the 3D model.
Yeah, VDI or something.
Latency. Oh my goodness, that was so eye-opening for them.
Yeah. Yep. Talk about unusable.
Yeah.
And this kind of goes back to like your sensors that you talked about, Benny, and how like Formula One racing in particular just gives you all these different visibility points. And the more you have, the more kind of in tune you are with that user experience. So is that something that you're kind of laser focused in on now, is like adding these different sensors around to kind of generate like the EUC score, for example? Or
yes.
Tell us a little bit more about that.
It's exactly that. So the idea is pretty much like you have it in Formula One. I think the same thing is in NASCAR, where you're collecting a lot of telemetry data. So car racing is an interesting example of how you can use that kind of technology, adding sensors, collecting the data. But then in the end, it's the driver. The driver wins the race, and so the telemetry data is a supporting act. It's more important these days, very clearly. Yep. So there is a job description of a race engineer that did not exist in the past, like 10 or 15 years ago. You would not have there was no role description for a race engineer. Today there is. And they are fine-tuning everything, and they're also using video. For example, for the racetrack, for the tires, they're using high-speed video to record the tires to find out if they're graining or if what happens with the tire, and so they can ask the driver to come back to the pit and change the tire in Formula One. And I find that fascinating that like combining this user experience from a driver's perspective, because you always see the camera from a driver's perspective when you'll watch the races. But on the other hand, you have the telemetry data, and that gives me a lot of inspiration. So I checked out how McLaren, for example, does it. They built the black boxes for Formula One, and sometimes they give you behind the scenes, insights by YouTube videos or something. And this is very interesting. It comes very close to what I'm doing. So I'm basically copying what they're doing and using some of my experience that I collected when I was a scientist, using scientific methods and using today's technology to measure the real impact that our EUC technology has on real end users.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny, just sometimes it just goes back to using the camera example, just something as simple as adding a screen recording capability and making sure that it actually aligns with what the sensor telemetry is reporting back, because sometimes it doesn't.
Sometimes my customers ask me, hey, how can we sort of troubleshoot things that are happening on the customer side, because we cannot see it on our screen? So I recommend that they contact the user. The user puts his smartphone on a tripod in front of the screen, and then they look at their telemetry data on the monitoring system and ask the user, okay, now you do exactly what makes the system crash. And you record it. We watch the telemetry data at the same time, and then you send us the video, and we have the correlation. This is much better than trying to have a conversation over phone or Teams or whatever, where the user tries to explain what they see. I mean, you could send that on primetime TV, and it would be a funny show
Yeah.
where users are trying to explain what they see on the screen.
And then so it's like one of those things where it's the game where you try to describe how to draw something and somebody else draws it without seeing the picture,
Yes,
kind of
yes,
thing.
exactly.
It's I think the problem with it is that it seems so simple and so obvious that you almost overlook it as a potential ingredient to measure. So we got another 6 minutes left. We did get another question from the audience. We love our audience questions. Benny, what do you think will be the role of AI in the world of tech moving forward? This one's from Hassan Wasim.
I mean,
Right.
I can give an answer for two things. One is tech in general. So it's going to have a huge impact because you can ask. I use it now for coding. So instead of searching the internet for code snippets or ideas or Reddit or whatever, you name it, I just ask like ChatGPT or Copilot, hey, just give me a snippet of code that does that.
Yep.
And you need to understand it. So you cannot tell it, build me an entire application. Maybe we're going to be at this point one day. Today, I don't think we are.
I did. I can.
Oh, you did? Okay. Sometimes it works. So for certain
Yeah, but you still have
application
to
types, it may work.
compile it. And,
For the stuff that I'm doing, it doesn't. But it's extremely helpful. So this will influence our market significantly.
Yeah.
Now, if we look at the specifics of end user computing, I expect that AI like NPUs are going to be used on the endpoint. We were talking about user experience to compensate artifacts, to sort of remove artifacts, because it can be it calculates, it detects the artifacts, and removing the artifacts is an interesting concept where you can use AI or predictions, so that AI already predicts what the next frame is going to be. So these are the things where I see a big impact, both on our market in general and on EUC in particular. And the one thing that I truly believe is what's very important is the way how you look at this entire industry. And I mean, we were talking about the end user experience. Why was that not a big topic in the past? But ever since Gartner came up with the term DEX, everybody looks at DEX, and I started asking myself, why did that happen only 5 years ago? Why did we ignore our users like 10 years ago, 15 years ago? Because I was part of consulting companies, I was part of vendors. Yes, if everything worked for the end users, we were happy, but it was never like we planned it.
I can postulate on it. I would just say that technology folks are more interested in the technology.
Correct. And there's another thing. Who did we sell to? We sold
technology people.
We never sold to the end user.
Yeah.
So now the market has changed. You have Windows 365. So end users, they sign up for Windows 365. They swipe the credit card and off they go. And this is a fundamentally different market. So companies like Microsoft and Citrix and Omnissa and HP and Vision and all of them, suddenly they need to focus on the end user, because the end user has a lot more control about what they purchase and not. And this is great for me, because suddenly they want to run these benchmarks and they want to see the results, because they want to make educated decisions before they purchase a system.
Love it. Believe it or not, we have 2 minutes left. It always flies. And Nick does his research and gets a bunch of questions, and I don't think we got to most of them. I had one quick one, which is like, you're like a team Max Verstappen guy, or like who's your guy, who's your driver you like in F1?
Yep, F1 driver, Benny, favorite one.
I mean, Mark Hulkenberg is interesting for me because he's the underdog, and suddenly
always
he's performing much better. I mean, Lewis Hamilton used to be the one that I thought is a very cool guy, and and very talented. I do not like the Dutch guy so much.
Oh, wow.
From my perspective, he's too aggressive.
I see.
He's very selfish and aggressive. He's not a real team player as I see it, and I'm a team player. I used to be a volleyball player, and without the team, you're nothing in volleyball.
Yeah.
And so I look at these people who are more the team players and want to make their team shine. And Verstappen is not exactly. He's the one who wants to win the race no matter what, even if his teammate suffers from that. So that's my perspective on it.
I love it. It's a good one. Nick, our last and famous question we always ask.
Yep.
We'll wrap.
If you had to choose somebody to be on the next one, Benny, who would you pick?
Oh yeah, one of the people in this market who inspired me most. There are a bunch of people like Kevin Goodman, like Steve Greenberg, and but one of them who inspired me very much is Jim Moyle. We worked at FS Logics together.
Yep.
We both were acquired by Microsoft, and Jim is still at Microsoft. He and I we're very close friends, and my wife and I we just were in Jim and his wife's Abby's house about a month ago, and so I want to recommend Jim Moyle as a good candidate.
All right, we're coming for you, Jim.
We're coming for you, Jim. Right, exactly. And now you have to listen to this through the entirety of 30 minutes before you get your name mentioned. But as always, just wanted to show my gratitude for all that joined us. We had 10 people live.
Good.
In the stream.
Thank you for dialing in.
I think it was great. Thank you, Benny, for joining us. Thank you, Nick, for being a great co-host. And we'll see you guys next week. I think we got another.
Thank you for inviting me. It was an honor,
Benny.
and it was big fun.
Have a nice Friday and weekend, everyone.
Oh, yeah. This is the end for me today.
Yeah.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.